Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to my webinar on Blogging 101. For those of you who are not aware, blogging is how I got started in this industry. I now do much more than blogging. I do website landing pages, newsletters, SEO, keyword research, marketing strategy, all of that good stuff. But blogging will always hold a special place in my heart, and it is super, super important for SEO, for establishing yourself as a leader in the industry. I just had this conversation with someone yesterday where they were like, why should I invest in blogging? And I was like, trying to think of one thing. And I was like, here's the one thing. Okay, here's another thing. Okay, wait, just one more thing. It's like I can't stop myself from talking about all of the reasons that blogging is so, so important. So, yeah, first and foremost, SEO. That's a big one. It is the Google looks at the content on your website to figure out what you're all about. So the more content you have on your website, the more Google has to work with, right? It's the difference between looking at, like, say, someone's resume and maybe they have a one pager and you're like, okay, that's great, but I don't really know anything about them. So then you look at their cover letter and that's a little bit more information, still not enough to really give you a sense of who that person is. So then you go to their social media or their blog if they have one, and that gives you a much better sense of who that person is. And then, of course, there's the interview. So Google is going to look through your content to figure out what you're all about. Google also prioritizes newer content over older content because it assumes newer content is more relevant. That is certainly true in my industry. In the world of SEO and blogging, there is a lot that is evergreen. Evergreen means it doesn't get old, or at least it stays fresh, so to speak. It stays relevant for longer than a quick update. So anytime Google releases a new update to their algorithm and everyone is talking about it, that's something I talk about as well. That's super relevant because it's new, but it's not evergreen, because then they're going to release another update, and after enough updates, older updates are going to become obsolete. Google actually recently said that one of their core updates from years ago is now obsolete because it's been overwritten so many times. So you need the content, you need fresh content. And again, the real live people who find your website are going to look at your blog to figure out who you are, what you're all about. Do you really know what you're talking about? Again, if they find you via a Google search, they're going to go straight to your blog. I have also had so many people that I meet in real life, either at a networking event or we get referred through a mutual connection. They go straight to my website to check me out and figure out who I am, what I'm all about, what I'm doing, all that good stuff. So it's important for all of those things. I also use my blog. This is a great tip in the sales process. If you are, again, I just had someone who had this question about keywords. Like, what does it really mean when you're researching keywords? Well, I have a whole blog post. It's a long process. I don't want to write it all out in this email, but I have a whole blog post that I wrote about it that lays it all out for you. I can send you a link to that blog post, quick and easy, takes me almost no time at all. She can look through it if she wants or not. Even just skimming through it will make her go, oh, okay. It'll give her a general idea of what keyword research entails, and it will also, again, position me as a thought leader so that she understands why what I do is so valuable. So that is why we care about blogging. For those of you who don't know me, I know some of you on this call, but for those of you who don't know me, for those of you watching the recording who don't know me, I am Allison Verhalen. I am a content marketer, SEO strategist, speaker, and author. Like I said, I got started in this business through blogging. I actually majored in English and psychology, which turned out to be the perfect degree for what I'm doing. Had no clue this was an option. Thought I wanted to work in publishing. Graduated in 2009, right after the job market crashed. So that wasn't going to happen. So I ended up answering phones for a few years, found myself between jobs at one point, and my roommate at the time, her dad, who was an attorney, was awesome and offered to give me stuff to do around his office until I got back on my feet. And one of the things he needed was someone to write blog posts for his law firm. And he knew I had a strong writing background, so he offered me the gig. And I was like, what? I can get paid to write? Seriously? Yeah, sign me up. So I jumped at that chance and started writing for him. His blog post, he was previously writing his own blog post before hiring me. And I had never written a blog post before, not even for fun. So I was looking through his blog post to get an idea of what I was supposed to write about. And the first blog post I found started out pretty strong. First 2 or 3 paragraphs, okay, got it. And then the next paragraph jumped to something seemingly completely different and unrelated. And I was like, how did you get from there all the way over to here? I did eventually figure it out because I was being paid to sit there and figure it out, right? If I had been a prospect, I would have gone, okay, thanks. I'm going to find what I need somewhere else because this is not helpful. So I went back to him and said, yes, I can blog for you because I know I can do better than this, right? So I took over his blog posts for him. I would write 2 to 4 blog posts per month. After 6 months, he came back and told me I had brought in $75,000 worth of business to his law firm through the blog post I was writing for him. So that was my first indication that like, oh, there's really money to be made here. There is actually a career here. It's not just busy work. It's not just a favor that he's doing me by hiring me to do this. This is actually a benefit to his business. So the rest is history, as they say. So why do I need a blog? I covered all this already. SEO, educate prospects. I forgot about that one. See, there's always more reasons. Educate prospects. So especially in my world, again, I'm constantly talking to people about why do I need a blog? What is keyword research? Why do I need a website? If you don't understand it, you got to be able to explain it to them so that they understand why you are the person to do this for them instead of someone else. Another example I love is someone I was talking to a while back who's a CPA who came to me complaining, saying she hates blogs. She doesn't want to blog. It's awful because she keeps getting people coming to her who think they know how taxes work, how their bookkeeping should work, because they read a blog somewhere that gave them, surprise, surprise, misinformation. Can we believe there's misinformation on the internet? I know, it's shocking. So the answer to that is not to not have a blog. It's to have a blog that puts out the right information so that before someone reaches out to you, if they've already read your blog, they're already educated. So on the flip side of that was I had a client once who I spoke at her event. She signed up for my newsletter. She was reading my blogs every week. By the time she was ready to hire me, she knew how it should work and how much I should be blogging for her on a regular basis because she had been reading my blog posts. So she was already educated. I didn't have to try to upsell her. I didn't have to try to explain to her how it would work. She was already on the same page, ready to go. We got to go straight to, all right, what does the contract look like? It was one of the easiest sales I have ever made. So I should add that to this slide, is that it makes sales so much easier. All right, how often should I be blogging? The big question. So the answer keeps changing. If you really want to know the people who get the most results from their blogs, it's the people who are blogging every single day, often multiple times a day. Don't think that you need to do that though, because that is not realistic. At a minimum, by the way, the people who do that every day are not one person. It's usually a team of people. It's a whole bunch of guest blog posts contributing to their blog. No one person can write that much in a day and have a life. So I'm not expecting you to do that. I'm not saying you have to do that. I just want you to know the spectrum is super wide. At a minimum, I would say once per month, have a new blog post. At a minimum, preferably twice a month. I was looking at some data a while back on Orbit Media, by the way, if you want to check that out. Highly recommend it. Awesome, awesome website, orbitmedia.com. Has a ton of awesome data on blogging, SEO, websites, all that good stuff. So they were finding that people who were blogging twice a month got the best results because they were investing in really long form content, which I will get into a little bit later. So I blog every single week. That's what I do. That's my system for my blog. You don't have to stick with it. I do tend to recommend the every week, but if you do every other week and make it a really long, in-depth blog post, the data shows you can still get results from that. So this leads into the next question. How long should my blog posts be? There is no one right answer, right? So everyone quotes the fact that blog posts, the average length of a blog post to rank on the first page of Google is about 1,600 words, which if you're writing it out in a Word document, single space, that's like 3 pages, right? I know it sounds like a lot. It's really not that much, especially for people who are reading, especially if they're skimming. So, but keep in mind, that is the average. That is not saying that every single blog to rank on the first page of Google is 1,500 words. That's not what we're saying. That is the average. There are shorter blog posts that rank. There are longer blog posts that rank. I do not recommend trying to get to an arbitrary word count and just filling your blog posts with fluff just because you want to reach that word count. That's not good writing. It's just not good writing. It makes the English major and me kind of cringe. Speaking as someone who, by the way, a big part of being an English major is putting in fluff to reach a certain word count. Every time we had to turn in an essay that was X number of words, it's like, okay, what can I stuff in here to reach that word count? So I've done more than my fair share of trying to reach that word count by any means possible. I don't recommend it. Always the first and foremost goal should be to create quality content that answers your audience's questions. So don't try to reach some arbitrary word count just because you think you have to. I do recommend 500 words at an absolute minimum. Again, SEO purposes. Google likes the longer content, and Google, again, arbitrarily decided a while back that 500 words was the cutoff. So that's what I do recommend. And if you're really diving deep into a topic, 500 words is really not that much. It really is pretty easy once you really dive deep into a topic. The longer ultimate guide style blog posts are the ones that tend to have the best results, right? If you are covering everything there is to cover on a topic, then anytime anyone searches that, first of all, Google likes that. And Google will go, oh, great, they have all this content. They're using this keyword and all these related keywords a whole bunch of times. We're going to rank this at the top for this particular keyword and possibly related searches, right? So that's reason number one. Reason number two is anyone who is looking for something specific about that topic. If they find your blog post, they're going to get the answer to their question because you have covered everything there is to cover. And people who don't know anything but are just looking for some information, if they find your blog post, they're going to go, oh, wow, this is a ton of information. Again, they're really well educated, and you have positioned yourself as an authority in your industry to convince them that you are the one that they want to work with. So if you can cover, and it doesn't depend on the industry, right? No one industry has shorter blog posts while another industry has longer blog posts. I get that question a lot. That is not the case. It does depend on the keyword. If you are targeting a particular keyword and you do some research to find content that's already ranking with that keyword, if you find that content tends to be 700 words, then great. Yours only has to be maybe 800 words to give you a little bit of that edge. But it depends on the keyword more than the industry. And again, it's all about making sure that you cover everything there is to cover in that topic. So that should be your focus. And again, going back to how often should I blog? A big reason that Orbit Media found that the blog posts publishing twice a month were getting better results was because they were publishing those really long ultimate guide style posts. And yes, people read all of that content. The data shows that the longer a piece of content is, the average amount of time people spend engaging with that content and reading that content. So don't try saying, oh, my people aren't going to read that much. A, yeah, they probably will. B, when your content is really long, you should break it up with subheadings, short sentences, short paragraphs. So there's lots of white space. That makes it really easy to read, scroll through, get all of the information that they need. What I always do is I break it up into categories with the little headings. And then at the top, I put a table of contents that contains a list of all of the subheadings with a link. So if they read that table of contents and they go, oh, I want to know about this specifically, they can jump straight to that section. So yes, people are going to skim your content. That's fine. Don't discourage them. Don't try to make them read the whole thing because that's not going to happen. Make it really easy for them to skim the content and access the content and consume the content, because the easier it is, the more likely they are to stick around and get all the way to that call to action. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. AI. We can talk about ChatGPT because I think that's the big one. It's not by any means the only AI text generative technology out there, but it is the one that everyone's talking about these days. I was talking to someone the other day, a fellow marketer, who said, yeah, she gets this question all the time about AI, and her response is always, It's a solid first draft. And I think that's a really good way of putting it is, yeah, it's a solid first draft. So, some of the limitations of AI, again, I put generative AI in quotes or generative text because it's not really generating anything. It's just scraping a bunch of content from elsewhere on the internet and repurposing it for you. And there are potentially copyright issues with that. And you're not setting yourself up as a thought leader if you're just saying the same thing everyone else is saying, right? The whole point of blogging is to establish yourself as an authority in your industry as the go-to source for this. AI can't do that for you. Storytelling is a huge one, and I will talk about that later, the importance of telling a good story that resonates with your audience, is relevant to the topic you're talking about. AI can't do that very well. It tries. It's been laughably bad so far. The stories that I've seen it try to write and the calls to action I've seen it try to write are just so bad. So those are some of the limitations, as well as the fact I saw a study that about half of the information ChatGPT gives you is wrong information. And we have so many examples of this right now, right? Even Bard had that famous commercial that tanked because they had wrong information. They didn't bother to fact check. They put it out there and it was a disaster. It was a PR disaster for them. Same with the lawyer. Well, I mean, there's one famous lawyer, but there are other lawyers who have turned in information and filed motions that have cited legal precedent that does not exist. They cited lawsuits that never happened, are not real lawsuits, because they put it through ChatGPT and they didn't bother to fact check. So if you are using something like ChatGPT, at the very least, fact check it, make sure it is accurate. I am all for using AI as a rough draft. Then you need to fact check it, put in your expertise, your personal experience, because that is where you set yourself apart as an expert is what are you seeing? What have you experienced? And then what does it mean? AI is great for just like the quick and dirty facts, right? Assuming it gets the facts right. But analyzing and interpreting that data, it's not so great about that. So you need to go in and insert your expertise, insert a good story, insert a really strong call to action. So don't, I mean, yes, you can use AI, just don't rely on it. Don't think that you can just be like, okay, great, I have all this content. Now I can copy and paste. Do not copy and paste. At the very least, you should use it to, again, fact check, edit it, make sure it's in line with your brand. I mean, this is my problem with AI is that it's very generic. You can train it to use your voice by interacting with it and using it a lot. The more you use it, the more it's going to learn how you talk and it's going to respond in kind and how you write. So you can do that. You can also input a bunch of information. Someone said she took a bunch of her blog posts that she had already written and put it into AI and then said, you know, write a blog post for me using this language. So that was her way of training it to use her brand voice, which I thought was awesome. That was really smart. That is also another thing to know about AI is that it's really good at summarizing information, analyze, organizing information for you. If you just want to like word vomit and then you're like, okay, how do I put this into something that I can actually publish on my website? AI can help organize the information that you wrote. It's just going to make it pretty for you. That is a great way to use it as well. So you can use AI, just be careful with how much you rely on it. Optimize your blog for search engines. There's a lot here. So first and foremost, have a target keyword. The target keyword is the main keyword. And I have a whole other presentation on how to research keywords, so I'm not going to get super into the weeds on that here. But the biggest tip for optimizing your blog for search engines is to have those keywords, use them effectively, have your target keyword in the headline, the title of your blog post, and then use either that target keyword, obviously use it throughout your content, and use either that keyword or related keywords in the subheadings. Google reads the title and the subheadings before it reads the rest of your content. So by putting the keywords in those spaces, that is a great way to get Google's attention and let it know, hey, here, this is what this content is about. That's going to clue Google in on that and go, okay, great. That's the searches we're going to match this with then. So keywords are big. Don't just try to have one keyword, have a bunch of related keywords. Google is getting better and better at figuring out synonyms, what words mean other things or other words and phrases that mean the same thing. So use synonyms. Don't keyword stuff. Keyword stuffing is when you use, for example, if you're talking about blogging and you want to have the word blog and you keep saying blog over and over and over in your blog, that's keyword stuffing. It used to work in the early days of SEO and Google got wise to that. And now it can actually hurt your SEO. And it's just bad content and no one wants to read it. So don't do that. Don't like try to cram the word in as many times as you can. Yes, it needs to be throughout your content, but in a way that makes sense. Just, be reasonable about it and use synonyms whenever you can. That will also help Google, and as well as related keywords. Again, length, I touched on this earlier, length is a big one. So Google looks at that. Google likes the longer content, which is silly, but we got to play by Google's rules. So, right. So have those long ultimate guide style posts that you can use to promote your content and educate your audience. That is a big one. The other one is alt tags. So yes, you can break up your content with images. I do recommend that because it makes it easier for people to digest your content, especially like Orbit Media. You'll see a bunch of charts and graphs because he's talking about lots of data and numbers, and putting that in a visual representation makes it really easy for people to go, oh, okay, that's what that means. So using that is great. Absolutely. We are visual creatures, right? So absolutely use visuals whenever it makes sense to do so. That does help your content. Google is still having a hard time reading visual and audio content. So there's going to be a little alt tag box, especially if you use WordPress. I think Squarespace has it too, where you just put in a short description of what this image is. That's just a way to tell Google what's in there. So absolutely take advantage of that. Try to put your keyword in that area. But don't just put your keyword in there, right? Like actually describe what that image is so Google has an idea of what content is there. Perfect your headline. So it starts with the keyword. It also needs to be super emotional, right? Because that is what's going to convince people to click through to that, from social media, from Google, wherever it is they're coming from. It's going to be the headline that convinces them to click through. And it's going to be those emotions that convince them to click through. So absolutely take advantage of those emotions. Use it to tell people what they can get out of it. What's in it for them? We all want to know what's in it for us, right? We all have limited time. Why should I click through? Why should I watch this video or read this blog post? The headline is going to tell them why. So it's got to be emotional. It's got to have that target keyword. It also can't be too long. After a certain number of words, I think it's like 70 characters. It kind of like Google just cuts it off and it doesn't even register anymore. And a similar character count for your email. I always use my blog post headline as my email subject line when I'm promoting that newsletter. And if it's too long, people aren't going to get to see the whole thing. So it should be, powerful, optimized with that keyword, but not too long. Tell people what your content is about, make a promise, fulfill that promise. Don't try to do the whole clickbait thing where you promise them one thing and then switch it out for another thing. No one likes that. That's not gonna, it'll get you views and clicks, but it won't get you any conversions. So tell people in the headline what the content is about and then actually fulfill that promise. I tend to write my headline first and last. I write it first. And then I go back and I actually write the blog post and then I go back and make sure the headline is still, I don't really like to use outlines. I'm more of a right by the seat of my pants. So sometimes I'll start out with an idea for a blog post and by the time I'm done, it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. So I need to adjust the headline accordingly. So it needs to accurately represent what that content is going to be all about. So absolutely. Oh, and I use CoSchedule's headline analyzer. That is my favorite tool for perfecting my headline. Make a list, check it twice. I Cannot believe I did this recently. I wrote a blog post on a topic that I had already written about. And normally, see, this is why I need to follow my own advice. Normally, I am really good. And actually, I had just been looking up other topics on my blog to see, what topics I had already covered. And somehow I missed that step when I was looking for this particular topic. Maybe I was just so confident I had not covered it yet. And then I went ahead and published it, and my WordPress put the little 2 at the end of the URL, and I was like, 2, what? Yeah, totally found a whole other blog post on the same topic, which is bad for SEO, by the way, because now you're competing with yourself for that keyword. So that was embarrassing. That was the first time that had happened to me. I do usually look through my existing blog posts to make sure I'm not doubling up on content. Same with all my clients. I have every time I have a spreadsheet for all of them, and every time I add a new blog post, I add it to the list so that I can go through that list and make sure I'm not duplicating anything. So have a list of all your blog posts. Again, WordPress makes this really easy. You can go straight to your posts and search. So that's what I do now that I've had my blog for, gosh, like 3 or 4 years now. Coming up on 5 years, I think. Wow. So there's a lot of content there because I've been blogging every week for 4 or 5 years. So there's a lot of content. So being able to just search makes it doable as opposed to an impossible amount of content that I have to scroll through. So absolutely take advantage of that. Or like I said, you can just use an Excel spreadsheet, or even a handwritten list if that's your thing, but have somewhere that works for you where you maintain a list of all the blog posts you've written so you're not redoing content you've already written about. Research your topic. So again, going back to the fact that you need that ultimate guide style post. Yes, I know you're the expert on your topic. You know all there is to know, but when there is a lot, sometimes it can be easy to forget. Oh yeah, I forgot to cover such and such. Oh yeah, I forgot to cover this. So by researching and seeing what's already out there, what content is already out there, you can make sure you're covering everything there is to cover. And you can also make sure that you are setting yourself apart. I have written about topics that I research, and I find that other people are covering a different aspect of that same topic. So we can absolutely talk about the same thing, but in very different ways and coming at it from different viewpoints. That's what's going to set you apart as an authority in your industry. And that's what's going to prevent you from just becoming more white noise online, right? So research your topic, not because you don't know about it, but just because you want to make sure you're covering everything there is to cover on that topic. Tell a story. We are creatures of stories. We are primed to engage with stories, and we are primed to remember stories, right? We can tell you all the facts and figures and statistics about XYZ. No one's going to care unless there's a story. If you kind of like wrap that data in a story, and suddenly it becomes much, much more memorable. So always, always, always tell a story. I, again, have a whole other presentation on how to incorporate telling a story into your blog, so I don't want to go too far into it right now. I do want to say that I have a few different ways. The first is you can tell a story, like a complete story at the beginning of your blog post, and then have your tips, tricks, resources to go along with that story. And then at the end, have something that ties into the beginning. I like to have a story that kind of incorporates all of the tips and tricks, right? So I want to talk about, here's the problem. That's what every story needs to focus on. What problem are you solving for them? Here's the problem. Here's the the pain point. And here's what's going to happen if you don't solve that pain point. But if you do solve it, if you work with us, here's what it can look like, and paint that picture for them of how it's going to look really awesome and feel really awesome. And then tell them how you can help them get there. Give them those tips and resources so they can get part of the way there themselves, and then remind them that they have not yet taken that call to action to work with you. So they're not quite, Cinderella dancing at the ball just yet. They're more like Cinderella with one glass shoe. All right, they've got part of the puzzle, but they don't have the whole thing yet. If they want the whole thing, they have to reach out to you. So tell a story. It's the most engaging part of your blog post. That is what I really did differently when I took over that blogging for that lawyer who was my first client. He wasn't telling a story, and all of the blog posts that I wrote for him, again, we were not saying anything that unique because I was so new to the industry. We were just taking content that already existed and repurposing it into a blog post and telling a story. And explaining to people through that story why this aspect of the law is so important, why they need to protect themselves, why they need to reach out to my clients so they can protect themselves. It was the story that made all the difference. Urgent call to action. It does not have to be urgent. It does help though. We are primed to respond to urgency, especially online. If you let them click away and they have not taken some call to action, the chances that they come back, we've all done this, right? We've all kept our tab open and been like, oh yeah, I'll come back to this website. And as soon as we leave, we forget all about it. Or maybe we think about it weeks later and go, oh yeah, I wonder what that website was. I meant to go back to it and it's too late. It's lost. You can't remember. You didn't save it. You didn't sign up for their newsletter. You have no idea what they're doing or what's going on. Don't let that happen to your prospects. Make sure that they know how to get a hold of you. So as someone in the B2B space who works with a lot of professional service providers, lawyers, realtors, financial professionals, all of those people, business coaches, right? They tend to have a longer buyer journey. They are technically B2C, but they operate a lot more like a B2B in that they have a longer buyer journey. There's usually more than one person making the buying decision / hiring decision. It's a pretty large investment. So it's going to take a while for people to decide, okay, yeah, I need this. Or they might encounter your blog when they're not yet ready to hire you, but they're thinking about it. Right now, they're just looking for information. So you need to find a way to continue to put content in front of them until they are ready to buy. So it doesn't always make sense to go, you schedule a call, let's have a consultation, buy my stuff. It could be something, my book is behind me, you can't see because of the PowerPoint. It could be buy my book. It could be sign up for my webinar, right? Where I'll be talking about such and such. It could be just some sign up for my newsletter so you can get more information like this. Whatever that next step is, again, this is why it's so important to have that buyer journey mapped out so you know where they are when they encounter each piece of content, what the next step is in the buyer journey, and how to get them to take that next step. Having that persuasive content is super important. And like I said, that's where the robots really fail because they have no idea what really motivates us as humans, right? By the way, that's the other potential pitfall with the using AI is that there are a lot of things that we take for granted as humans because we know how it works that the robots have no concept of. So I have heard people say that it's like having a really dumb administrative assistant, right? You have to explain every single little thing to them because they don't have the same level of awareness, level of understanding that we have. So that's another tip on your AI tool if you end up using it. Please proofread your content before publishing. Ideally, you should have another pair of eyes on your content before you publish. You can hire an editor if that makes sense for you financially. If not, have your business partner read it. It's really beneficial if you can have someone read it who is not in your industry. Again, if you're B2C or even if you're B2B trying to reach out to people who are not in your industry, who don't understand your lingo, your jargon for your particular industry. So make sure someone else is reading it who can understand the content, because if they get lost, your prospects are going to get lost. So it could be your business partner, it could be a friend, it could be a spouse. If your kid is really good at English, have them proofread your content for you. If you are stuck, if it's no one but you, like me and my dog, right? My dog is not super helpful with proofreading. So I tend to leave content alone for at least 24 hours, preferably longer. The longer you leave it alone, the more you can come back to it with fresh eyes. That's when I'm really good at deleting content, extra words, extra sentences, sometimes even paragraphs or sections that don't need to be there. My content always ends up a whole lot shorter after I'm done editing. But also, again, looking for those typos, the grammatical mistakes. Another way to kind of trick your brain into thinking that you're reading something new. Slow down, read it out loud, because when you are reading content you wrote, you know what you meant to say. So your brain kind of fills in what you meant to say, especially if you're just skimming it. So reading it out loud forces you to slow down. I have caught so many embarrassing mistakes of mine by slowing down and reading content out loud. And my dog looks at me like I'm crazy, but she does that anyway. So, and it does make the content better. So slow down, read it out loud. You can also change the font because that tricks your brain into thinking you are reading something completely new. So when I write a blog post, I write it in my website in WordPress, and then I will usually do the preview, the what it will look like when it's published. It's a completely different setup, different background, looks completely different. Great way to trick your brain into going, oh, this is completely new. I've never seen this before. So that's a really neat trick to use. Now, where do you put your blog? On your website. I get this question all the time. People think they can put it on social media. They can write a Facebook article. They can write a LinkedIn article. They don't need a website. Okay, it's true. You don't need a website until you get locked out of your LinkedIn account, until your Facebook account gets hacked and you need to start all over again. And you need to figure out how to access and reach all those people who were following you and reading your content. And now what are you going to do? Now, how are you going to get in front of them? Always, always, always put it on your website first and foremost, because that is the only real estate that you own on the internet. You control everything that goes up there. You cannot get canceled. You cannot get locked out. I mean, you can, but there's always a way for you to get back in. There is no going into, there is no version of LinkedIn jail or Facebook jail for your own website unless you get hacked, which is a whole other topic. That's not something I help with, but I know people who do help with that. So make sure that it lives on your website. And then absolutely, I'm not like anti-social media, absolutely use social media to distribute your content, which I believe is the next slide. Content distribution tips and tricks. Social media. Your newsletter is also great, right? If people signed up for your newsletter, it's because they want to hear from you. So tell them what's going on, give them tips and tricks in the form of your blog post or a video, and then go into promoting whatever it is you're promoting that week or that month. So yes, SEO should hopefully draw people to your website, but don't rely on SEO. You can absolutely and should use other ways to actively distribute your content. And social media and your newsletter are the biggest ways to do that. You can publish your blog post on sites like Medium. That can be a little bit tricky if you're publishing it on your website and on Medium. Again, you don't own Medium, so if you're relying on it, that can lead to problems later on. So I don't recommend doing that. You can publish it on your website and on Medium. That can get into, you're competing for yourself for that keyword, and Google does not like duplicate content. So Google will look at that and downgrade one or both of those posts, in which case you're fighting against yourself there and kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So there is a way to do it. It's a little more technical. You can add a tag on your content that says this is canonical. This is the first piece of content to be published in, with all these words in exactly this way. This is duplicate content. You're not like punishing the medium for having duplicate content. You're just letting Google know they're not duplicate. This is the canonical one. So pay attention to this one, prioritize this one. That one gets a little tricky. So if you want to know more about that, you can reach out and we can talk about that in private. And then you have to do it all over again. One of the biggest mistakes I see people making over and over again is they write like 3 blog posts and then they get busy, they get distracted, they move on to other things, and they never come back to it and they go, oh, I didn't get any results from blogging. Yeah, you won't by doing it just a few times. You gotta keep doing it again and again and again. So like I said, have that schedule, whether it's once a month, twice a month, every week, whatever that schedule is, make sure it's realistic for you. It's something you can actually stick with, and stick with it. Keep doing it again and again and again. And that is it. That is all of my tips for you. So if you still have questions, you can use this QR code to reach out and schedule an appointment with me, or I am going to go ahead and stop recording now. So if you are watching the recording and you have any questions, you have to reach out to me. So thanks so much for watching, everyone.